Good morning, this is Nicole Ringgold. Today I'm going to show you how to make these Esqueleto Monstera earrings. You'll need 24 gauge sterling silver sheet, and then you can use rubber cement. I print out the size of the leaves that I want to saw out and use the rubber cement to adhere it to the 24 gauge sheet. If you're going to make a pendant instead of earrings, then I would switch over to 22 gauge sterling silver sheet. Be sure not to spread too thick a layer of rubber cement on your silver because it will take forever for it to dry. And your paper will slip around the surface, which is really frustrating when you're trying to saw. Once the glue dries, you can use any size drill bit to pierce through the sheet. If you're making earrings with 24 gauge sheet, then there's a range. You can look at the saw blade chart. There's 24 gauge, range is 5/0 to 7/0, so I usually go right in between with a 6/0. Thread your saw through the piercings, and one at a time, saw your way through. Make sure that the blade is nice and taut. Wax your blade. And then as you're sawing, for those who are not very familiar with sawing, be sure not to clamp your saw. Think of it like you're holding a bird by its neck and you don't want to choke the bird. Once you loosen your grip, then you'll have much less tension all the way up to your neck, and your sawing will be much more smooth. Once you've pierced and sawed all the way through, all around every little component, then do the outside. This allows you to anchor your piece down while you're dealing with the smaller details. Peel off the paper and then rub off the excess rubber cement. And note that your silver is going to be dirty at this point. And my foolproof way of cleaning silver is to anneal. I don't scrub it. Oh, you can see I split my finger when sawing. So I use a Little Smith oxygen propane torch, and I'm going to what would normally be the temperature I'm using to solder onto the mass, so the amount of silver that's in front of me. I'm adding my oxygen, creating that nice light blue flame, and now I'm adding propane so that it's a soft flame, as you can see. This is my annealing flame for this mass. If you're interested in learning more about how to use this torch, I do have a full-length tutorial on how to use the Little Smith torch that you should refer back to. For your first annealing, you're going to heat it until when you pull away, your piece is black, like that. And then from there, I'll put it in the pickle. While it's in the pickle, you can use, this is a cutoff wheel, and you can use this to taper. I've got 2 pieces of 16 gauge round sterling silver wire. Another option that's a lot faster is this really nifty, it's a rotary sanding belt that you can put into your flex shaft. And I got mine through Rio Grande, and if you're interested, let me know and I can provide the link in comments. Once I have it assembled, then I can use it to sand down. I'm going to taper the end of each piece of 16 gauge wire, bringing it to a tapered point. Back at the soldering station, I'm going to take my now pickled leaves, and I'm going to, they're facing opposite directions, and I did not, just a note, I did not saw them together, taped or glued together, because I did want to make them a little bit unique. I didn't want them to be exactly matching, so I sawed them out one at a time. And then I'm going to use my fingers to bend the 16 gauge wire so that it fits the sheet. I'm not going to hammer it so that it's flat, because as I'm sweat soldering the solder to the wire, which you'll see here in a minute, it will naturally slump. I've marked where I want to create my bail, or my jump ring, so to speak, my loop. So I'm tilting it to the left, wrapping it around my round nose pliers, and then I'm going to use flush cutters to snip. I need it to be touching but not perfectly flush because I'm going to be fusing this connection. So that's a nice little lollipop top. Taking flush cutters, snipping with the flush side, and then I'll use needle nose pliers to ensure that it is on the same plane when I place it back down on my soldering platform. Now I'm using my torch, and I'm going to focus my heat on the bend right here, which is the mass. And then I'll use my pick at right around 10 or 11 o'clock to ensure that I'm nudging so that they're touching, and there it fuses. Heating the bend, nudging at around 10 o'clock. One of the loops is a little bit bigger, so I'm going to put my torch at the center of the circle to draw it inward, or to shrink it inward. Then I'm going to flux. I use Mighty Flux, my T Flux from Rio Grande. And this is easy solder. I'm heating the solder, not the pick. And you just don't want to heat the solder for too long, because otherwise it will be happy on your soldering platform. Solder follows heat. Pick soldering to the 16 gauge wire, making sure that it's puddling on the wire. You don't want to leave it as a ball, because otherwise it will just fall off. To get it off your pick, you heat the metal and ensure that the solder is touching the metal, because again, solder follows heat. So then you'll transfer the wire over to the leaves. I'm fluxing here, again, Mighty Flux. And then I'll transfer the wire over to the leaves. If you prefer, you can put the leaves with the wires on top of some kind of tripod, in which case you'll want to flux the bottom of the leaf as well. But if you're going to do this method, you only need to flux the top. I flux everything that my torch touches. That prevents fire scale, and it also allows me to watch the colors of the silver as I'm heating it. Because as soon as the silver turns a slight yellow hue, that means easy solder flow point. So I'm focusing my torch on the mass, and I'm watching the color. If I focus my torch on one particular spot, I will likely melt it. So I'm moving my torch around, and there I can see it's a slight yellow hue, which means solder flow point. In which case, I'll move closer to the wire, heating the mass still to draw the solder from the wire down underneath and all along the sheet until it's fully flowed all the way. Of course, then I'll do that to the other leaf. And then once they're both done, I will place them in the pickle until they're nice and white. After pickling, I'll rinse them off and then return to my flex shaft. And the first bit I use is the cutoff wheel. Sometimes they're referred to as a separating disc. When I look at this, the edge of the leaf, the sheet, you can see it's got a square edge. So my point is to bevel the edges to make them look more alive or more lifelike. And then I'll use a black silicone wheel to soften what I've just done to make it so that it's nice and smooth. I'll do this on both the front and the back side of the leaf and across the one vein down its center. And last, I'll use a abrasive coarse fiber wheel, moving around in all directions. I like this because it gives it a brushed appearance. From here, I would solder on ear wires, go through the same finishing, polishing routine that I just did showing you, and then that's it. Thank you to Rio Grande for sponsoring my YouTube channel, and comment below if you have any questions. Enjoy. Thank you.